There's a girl standing waist-deep in a muddy Alabama river, bare arms submerged in murky water, waiting. No safety net, no hesitation, just her, the current, and whatever's lurking beneath the surface. When she yanks her arm back out, there's a 30-pound catfish latched on with its mouth, and she's grinning like she just won the lottery. That video hit the internet in 2016 and exploded to nearly 20 million views almost overnight. The world had no idea who Hannah Barron was. And then suddenly everyone did. But here's the thing about overnight stories. They never actually happen overnight. Behind that viral moment was a girl who grew up in one of the most rural corners of Alabama, raised through a broken home, picked on her whole life for not fitting anyone's idea of what a young woman was supposed to be. She didn't become fearless because the cameras were rolling. She was already fearless long before anyone was watching. What followed that viral video wasn't just fame. It was a wave of attacks, a broken engagement no one saw coming, a near tragedy that almost took the most important person in her life, and a relentless online world that couldn't seem to decide whether to worship her or tear her apart. This is the story most people never got, the part that happened off camera, in hospital rooms, in silence, and in the kind of resilience that doesn't make for a clean highlight reel. This is the heartbreaking story of Hannah Barron. Crenshaw County, Alabama sits in the southern part of the state where the pine forests run thick, and the nearest city feels like a different world. It's the kind of place where people grow their own food, where kids learn to handle a firearm before they learn to drive, and where the outdoors isn't a hobby, it's just life. That's where Hannah Barron was born on July 3, 1996, and it shaped everything that came after. Her father, Jeff Barron, was a hunter through and through. The man lived for the woods. From the time Hannah could walk, he was pulling her into that world with him, teaching her to read the land, understand the animals, and respect the process. Most kids her age were watching cartoons on Saturday mornings. Hannah was in a homemade ground blind made of pine limbs, sitting still waiting for a deer to step into the clearing. She was 8 years old when she took her first shot. Jeff had drilled patience into her from day one, made her watch doe after doe, smaller bucks, anything that wasn't worth the trigger pull. And then the right one stepped out, a clean 7-point buck. She pulled the trigger, and that was it. She was hooked for life. But the picture-perfect outdoors upbringing had a crack running through it. Her parents' marriage didn't last, and as a young girl, Hannah found herself navigating the kind of quiet fracture that changes a kid in ways they can't always name. The family split, and that stability she'd built her early years around was suddenly different. What didn't change was her father. Jeff remained her constant, the anchor in a world that had shifted underneath her. She didn't grow up with a lot of options for who to be. Crenshaw County wasn't exactly offering a wide menu of role models for a girl who'd rather gut a deer than paint her nails. So she became exactly who her environment made her: tough, capable, self-reliant, and completely unbothered by what anyone else thought that should look like. She didn't know it yet, but the world was going to have a very strong opinion about that. Growing up the way Hannah did meant spending most of her time around men. Her father's world was full of hunters, fishermen, and outdoor workers, guys who didn't think twice about getting muddy, bleeding a little, or working through discomfort without complaining. Hannah absorbed all of it. By the time she was 15, she wasn't just tagging along on hunting trips, she was helping her father build houses. Actual construction, framing walls, laying flooring, doing the kind of physical labor most adults twice her age would tap out of by noon. And the world around her had thoughts about that. She's talked openly about being picked on her whole life, the girl who'd rather be in the woods than at the mall, the one who didn't fit the Southern Belle mold that a lot of people around her expected. It wasn't just teasing either. It was the kind of persistent, low-grade social pressure that follows a girl everywhere when she refuses to shrink herself into something more acceptable. School, community, strangers online later, the message was always the same. You're doing this wrong. You're being a woman wrong. Hannah ignored every single bit of it. Around this same time, a man named Brad Gavins moved in next door. He was a local game warden, and when Jeff Barron helped him out by cutting some lumber, Gavins returned the favor in a way nobody could have predicted. He took Hannah and her father out and introduced them to catfish noodling, the practice of reaching barehanded into underwater holes and pulling out catfish by letting them bite down on your arm. No rod, no reel, just you, the water, and whatever's waiting in the dark. Hannah was 15 years old. Most teenagers introduced to something that terrifying would have stood on the bank and watched. She got in the water. From that first trip, she was obsessed. There was something about noodling that matched exactly who she already was: raw, physical, requiring nerve over technique, and completely misunderstood by anyone who hadn't tried it. It wasn't a sport she discovered. It felt more like something she'd always been built for, finally had a name. She just needed a camera to prove it. In 2016, Hannah bought a cheap video camera. Not to launch a career, not to build a brand. She bought it to test it out, the same way someone might take a new phone outside to see how the camera handles sunlight. She happened to be heading out to noodle that day, so she brought it along. Her cousin was there, talking in the background. The water was murky, brown, and cold-looking the way Alabama rivers get. Hannah slipped in, arms first, and within minutes pulled out a 30-pound catfish latched onto her forearm like it owned her. She posted the video on Instagram without overthinking it. Just another day. Just another fish. Then someone reposted it on Facebook. What happened next is the kind of thing social media managers spend entire careers trying to manufacture and almost never actually achieve. The video exploded. Not gradually, overnight. Shares stacked on shares, page after page pushing it out to audiences who had never heard of Hannah Barron and couldn't stop watching. By the time the dust settled, that single clip had racked up somewhere between 15 and 20 million views. For context, that's more than most professional media campaigns ever see. Part of what made it impossible to look away was how real it was. No production value, no script, no carefully lit shot designed to make everything look effortless. Just a young woman in a bikini, submerged in river water, grinning as she wrestled a fish the size of a small dog with her bare hands. There was nothing polished about it, and that was exactly the point. People could feel that she wasn't performing. This was just Tuesday for her. At the time, noodling content was almost non-existent online. Outside of a niche cable show called Hillbilly Handfishin', most people had never seen anyone do what Hannah did on camera. The combination of genuine skill, raw authenticity, and a subject most of the world knew nothing about created the perfect storm. She hadn't set out to go viral. She hadn't set out to become anything. She just wanted to see how the camera worked. Now millions of people were watching, and not all of them were fans. Fame at that scale doesn't arrive clean. It comes with a crowd attached, and not everyone in that crowd is cheering. The moment Hannah's video broke into the mainstream, the internet split right down the middle. Half the people watching were genuinely amazed. Here was a woman doing something most grown men wouldn't attempt, doing it casually, doing it well. The other half had opinions that had nothing to do with the catfish. The first wave of criticism came fast. People accused her of using her appearance to gain followers, that the real reason the video spread wasn't the skill or the authenticity, but the fact that she was an attractive young woman in a bikini. Hannah didn't flinch. Her response was about as Hannah as it gets. She'd been noodling in a bikini long before anyone was filming it, long before she had a single follower to impress. As she put it herself, "You don't noodle in long sleeves. That's just practical. The water doesn't care what you're wearing." But the comments kept coming. Her femininity, her voice, her lifestyle choices, the way she carried herself, all of it became fair game for strangers who had decided she was doing womanhood incorrectly. The criticism wasn't just occasional either. It became a background noise that followed her everywhere she posted, a persistent undercurrent beneath every viral moment and every new milestone. Through all of it, Hannah kept her head down and kept building. In 2018, she graduated from Troy University with a Bachelor of Science from the College of Communication and Fine Arts, something that rarely gets mentioned when people talk about her story. The girl being mocked online for being unsophisticated had quietly earned a university degree while simultaneously growing one of the most genuine outdoor brands on the internet. By this point, her following had grown well beyond the original viral moment. People weren't just watching for the noodling anymore. They were watching because Hannah was exactly the same person in every single video, unfiltered, unpolished, and completely unwilling to perform a version of herself that would make critics more comfortable. That authenticity was magnetic. It was also, it turned out, a target. Somewhere in the middle of building her career, Hannah's personal life quietly told a different story. It started the way a lot of things start for people who live their lives online, through a DM. A guy named Hunter Ryan Horton had seen one of Hannah's Instagram posts and recognized the lake in the background. He knew that water. He'd spent his whole life on it. So he reached out not with some rehearsed line but just to make a connection over a shared place. For Hannah, who had built her entire world around the outdoors, that was about as good an opening as anyone could have made. They started dating in 2016. He was a hunter. She was a hunter. They spoke the same language in the most literal sense. She featured him in her content, posted him on birthdays and Valentine's Day, brought him into the world she'd built and the audience that had grown up watching her. From the outside, it looked solid. Two people who understood each other's lifestyle completely, who could disappear into the woods together and call it a perfect weekend. By Christmas of 2018, he proposed. She said yes. The engagement announcement landed on December 30, 2018, and her audience celebrated with her. After years of watching her take on catfish and critics and everything in between, people were genuinely happy to see her happy. It felt like one of those moments where everything was finally pointing in the right direction, And then, sometime in 2019, it was over. No announcement, no explanation, no dramatic public fallout that gave anyone a clean narrative to follow, just a gradual silence where his presence used to be, posts that stopped featuring him, a name that stopped coming up, and an engagement that quietly ceased to exist. Hannah never addressed it publicly, never pointed fingers, never gave the internet the breakdown it tends to demand from women who've been through something painful. She just kept going. Back to the water, back to the woods, back to the camera. It was the same thing she'd always done when life got hard. She picked up whatever she was carrying and kept walking forward. But the hardest moment of her life hadn't arrived yet. January 2024 started like any other month in Hannah's world. Hunting season was still running, her father was still in the woods where he always was, and life had the kind of quiet rhythm that comes with doing what you love in the place you've always called home. Then the phone call came, or rather the moment that made the phone call necessary. Jeff Barron had climbed up into a friend's lock-on tree stand to inspect it. It was a routine thing, the kind of casual check experienced hunters do without a second thought. When he stepped over onto the platform, the top strap snapped. There was nothing to grab, nothing to slow it down. He fell 18 to 20 feet and hit the ground hard enough to knock him completely unconscious. When he came to, he was alone. No phone on him, no one nearby, just a man at the bottom of a tree in the middle of the woods with a body that had just taken a devastating impact. What Jeff Barron did next is almost impossible to process. He got up, he walked 400 yards through the woods, climbed a fence, got into his truck, and drove himself home. The kind of toughness that takes a lifetime to build, called on in the worst possible moment. At the hospital, the full extent of the damage became clear. Broken vertebrae in both his neck and his lower back. The fall that should have ended everything somehow hadn't, but it had come terrifyingly close. Hannah posted a video from the hospital, sitting beside her father in a neck brace, and the rawness of it stopped her audience cold. This wasn't content. This was a daughter sitting in a hospital room trying to hold herself together long enough to say what needed to be said. Her words were measured, but the weight behind them was unmistakable. He was lucky to be alive, lucky to not be paralyzed. Now it was just about making sure he healed the right way. The outdoor community rallied immediately. Prayers, messages, and support flooded in from every corner of the internet. But while that support was pouring in, a very different kind of attention was already building, and it was heading straight for Hannah. In March 2024, while Hannah was still processing her father's recovery, the internet decided it had something to say about her. A journalist and foreign policy analyst named Samira Khan posted a video of Hannah doing construction work, the same kind of physical labor she'd been doing alongside her father since she was 15 years old. Khan's caption was direct and vicious. She wrote that Hannah's southern accent should be illegal, that women should be banned from manual labor, and that there was nothing feminine about American women. The post hit 60 million views on X almost immediately. 60 million, the pile-on that followed was exactly what that kind of post is designed to produce. Strangers who had never watched a single video Hannah made, never seen her in the water, never understood the first thing about who she was or where she came from, suddenly had very confident opinions about her worth as a woman. Hannah's response became the moment a lot of people discovered who she really was. She posted a video that was calm, direct, and completely unbothered, in a way that clearly came from genuine indifference rather than performance. She'd been getting picked on her whole life. She grew up around men, she'd built her own box a long time ago and stopped trying to fit into anyone else's. The ship had sailed on rattling her, and it had sailed years before Samira Khan had ever heard her name. But that wasn't the only fire burning. Around the same period, Hannah had posted images from a bear hunt that ignited a separate wave of fury. Death threats flooded her inbox. Not criticism, not debate, actual threats. Her account was locked by the platform until she deleted an elk photo she'd been using as her profile banner. Both animals, she pointed out plainly, had been eaten, not trophies. Food. She didn't spiral. She didn't retreat. She addressed it, stated the facts, and moved on. That pattern, getting hit, absorbing it, responding with clarity, and then getting back to work, isn't something Hannah developed for the cameras. It's the same thing she learned at 8 years old in a pine limb ground blind, waiting for the right moment without flinching. The attacks just never figured that out. Hannah Barron is still in the water, still in the woods, still posting the same unfiltered, unapologetic content she was making before anyone knew her name. Nearly 1 million subscribers on YouTube, over 1.7 million on Instagram, a CBD business built alongside her father, and a life that looks almost identical to the one she was living before the world decided to have an opinion about it. That's the part of this story that doesn't get talked about enough. The heartbreaking part was never just the broken engagement, or the hospital waiting room, or the 60 million people piling on at once. The heartbreaking part is that none of it should have been necessary. She never asked to be anyone's target. She just wanted to go noodling. And no matter how many times the world tried to pull her under, Hannah Barron did what she's always done. She came back up holding the fish,